died, but in this notice, they are trying to get it in saying that it shows his intent that day, that his intent was to not aid and intervene in George Floyd's arrest, and when he saw that assault, that he wanted to get around doing more work. He's, again, the officer who did not touch Floyd. He was the one that was dealing with the bystanders, and we have a clip from the body camera footage of how he reacted when the officers were discussing putting Floyd in a different kind of restraint. Take a listen.
You got your restraint? Hobble? Okay. Grab that. Thank you. Stop moving.
Mama.
Yeah,
Mama. Mama.
One of the front couches.
Mama.
On my right side bag.
Mama.
No, this guy.
All right. Oh my God.
We call it for
I can't do nothing.
Yeah, EMS is on their way.
My face is gone.
Well, do you want to hobble at this point then?
I can't breathe, man. Please understand. No, please, man, I can't breathe.
And if you heard it there, Officer Tutau saying if we have to get this hobble, which is a strap, and they would have strapped his arms and his legs to keep him from moving, sitting on top of him, he's saying that we'd have to file a report and a sergeant would have to come out, though.
Actually, I just wanted, because Tutau was always that one that was so different. You know, he was standing there the whole time doing nothing. Kind of gives us a sense of now how they believe they can get a conviction on a guy who didn't do anything.
Yeah, I mean, it sure makes sense, right? When you see the suggestion that let's get another kind of device, as Julia just reported, and he says, no, if you do that, then we have to get a supervisor here. It kind of goes to that whole notion that this guy's lazy, and that's what this is all about. They're trying to suggest that Officer Tutau, or former Officer Tutau, is lazy, and that his laziness is the contribution here to George Floyd's death, and I think that's very clever. But what I don't think is clever is that prosecutors have certain rules that they have to abide by when they bring in prior bad acts. And those same rules don't apply to defense attorneys. You see where I'm going here, right? Because if you want to put all of these officers together, if you want to try them all together, which is what the state's asked you to do, joinder, right? Well, then all of a sudden you have other officers who can use that stuff against him. And that I can see being very problematic, right? Because the prosecutors, if they get their way and they can use the prior bad acts, then they have to they have restrictions. But the defense attorneys don't. And so I can see that being a very sticky wicket for the court to have to decide, especially regarding putting all these cases together or having them tried separately.
Yeah, absolutely. Julia Chauvin, also the subject of more violence.
He was also included in that Spriegel notice. We already had a notice filed September 10th that listed each of his arrests in the past that the state wants to get in before the jury, and they all involve a neck restraint where they say Officer Chauvin used excessive force with different people, but they didn't tell us how they planned to get it in. So now in this new filing, we know how they intend to try and get a judge to agree to let them bring that before a jury. And again, Rules of Evidence 404B has those limited ways that you can get in these prior bad acts if you're not using it for conforming conduct. And they say that it was his intent that day, that those other arrests or incidents, that shows what his intent was when he had his knee on George Floyd's neck, that he had knowledge of how you were supposed to properly handle an arrest when someone was combative in that way, and that it shows his modus operandi, his mode of operation every time that he encounters a suspect like this. And there's one incident that we pulled out from back in August of 2015 where he was dealing with an intoxicated, mentally disturbed male, and that there were other officers with him who actually put that male in a side recovery position. That's something that didn't happen in the arrest of George Floyd. And after it was all over, these officers were hailed by medics who told them, look, if you did not turn that man over, he actually could have died. So again, going to the knowledge that Chauvin had at the time of George Floyd's death, where he understood that a side recovery position is important.
Actually, doesn't his MO, could it work to his advantage?